Welcome back to Bad Things in History, where this week our series about the least remembered and most horrible events in each state continues with Indiana. It has been home to an impressive series of troubling events. Disease, explosions, and deadly accidents are just a few of the more disturbing occurrences. Let's start with a swarm of squirrels. Great Squirrel Stampede. Until very recently, squirrels were seen as nothing more than a pest. For many farmers, they were just as devastating as locusts or any of the numerous diseases that could kill crops. And the worst part of all was that farmers couldn't predict when the ravenous rodents would arrive. One of the worst examples of squirrel terrorism took place in Indiana. In the early 1800s, settlers began moving into what is now Hamilton County. The entire area was originally dense forest, but the settlers cut down the trees and created farms in their place. One day in late 1822, the farmers of the county were suddenly greeted by nature's wrath. Swarms of squirrels poured through the fields, devouring every plant. The farmers and their families began shooting at the squirrels. When the bullets ran out, they then used clubs to beat the rodents to death. But no matter how many were killed, it wasn't enough to stop the destruction. By the end of the day, the squirrel stampede was over. The cornfields were littered with the remains of devoured plants and dead squirrels. Modern squirrel experts think the farmers may have unwittingly caused this stampede. By cutting down forests, they destroyed the ecosystem which fed the squirrels. Once the animals ran out of food, they poured into nearby fields because there was nowhere else to go. Hamilton County celebrated the bicentennial of this event in March 2022. Purdue Wreck. Football has been an important game in Indiana since at least 1891. One of the more popular rivalries is between Indiana University in Bloomington and Purdue University, which is in West Lafayette. Once per year, the two teams meet and play to determine the winner. In 1903, the teams wanted to play their game on neutral ground, so they decided to travel to Indianapolis for the annual contest. To get there, each team had a special train. Special trains were allowed to travel on the railway without being scheduled like other trains were. On the morning of October 31st, two special trains began their trip to Indianapolis. One of them held 950 passengers. The other had 550 people on board. The conductors of the special trains were unaware that dispatch failed to communicate their existence. So when a train full of coal cars came around a curve heading straight at them, it was a surprise for everybody. Unfortunately, the cargo train couldn't stop and there was a head-on collision. The car that held the football teams and coaches was completely demolished during the impact. The train car that held the marching band was tossed into a gravel pit. The students riding in cars farther back were uninjured. They began trying to help victims. One of the students later said of the event, "We began carrying the people out, the injured ones. There was a line of horse and buggies along the whole stretch there for half a mile. We didn't stop for ceremony. We simply loaded the injured people into the buggies and sent the buggies into town." 17 people were killed in the crash. Another 40 were seriously injured. An investigation into the accident determined that a dispatcher was at fault. He never bothered to report the special trains as required. Richmond Explosion. In addition to train accidents, Indiana also had a problem with things exploding. April 6, 1968 was an otherwise normal Saturday. People went about their business in the city enjoying their weekend, blissfully unaware of the disaster to come. A sporting goods store on Main Street had a natural gas leak, but this was nothing new. Most of the stores in the area had a gas leak. Business owners knew about it and had been dealing with it by opening their doors periodically to let fumes escape. Around 1:47 p.m., something in the sporting goods store ignited the gas fumes. This caused ammunition in the store to explode, which then started more fires. The explosion was so powerful that it was heard over 2 miles away. Residents of the town began working to put out the fires and help victims. In the end, 41 people died and more than 120 were injured. 15 buildings were completely destroyed and more than 100 had to be condemned. In response to the disaster, a new law was passed on August 12, 1968, imposing tougher regulations on the natural gas industry. Ramada Inn Crash. In addition to train wrecks and squirrel invasions, Indiana was also a dangerous place for airplanes. On the morning of October 20th, 1987, Major Bruce L. Teagarden took off from Pittsburgh International Airport. He had been attending a funeral there, but now it was time to fly his Corsair II to Nevada. At 9:11 a.m., he contacted Indianapolis International Airport to report an emergency. The Corsair's engine had stopped working, so an emergency landing at the airport was necessary. As Major Teagarden tried to reach the airport, his plane descended in altitude faster than expected. At 500 feet above the ground, the Major realized he wouldn't make it to the runway. He ejected from the aircraft and began safely descending to the ground beneath the parachute. Meanwhile, the airplane banked to the right, bounced off the roof of a bank, then crashed into a Ramada Inn. The airplane entered the hotel lobby, killing 9 people instantly. Another 10 died several days later from severe burns. The United States government agreed to pay a little over $50,000 in property damages as compensation for the accident. In January 1988, the results of the investigation were finally released. A defective gear caused the Corsair's engine to stop working. The Ramada Inn was never rebuilt. Today, it is the site of a parking lot. Indiana's serial killer. Not every death in Indiana was accidental. Murderers also called the state home. Herb Baumeister was born in Indianapolis on April 7, 1947. He was a normal child, but as Herb reached adolescence, his behavior became very strange. He started playing with dead animals, and for some reason he decided to urinate on the teacher's desk at school. A psychiatrist diagnosed Herb with schizophrenia. However, nothing was done to treat the condition. Herb was able to function more or less normally as a young adult. In 1971, he married Julie Sater. He produced several children with his new bride, but Herb was still fighting with mental health problems. For the next several years, he would be a frequent guest of psychiatric hospitals. Despite his emotional difficulties, Herb opened a successful chain of thrift stores in 1988. To the public, he appeared to be a stable and successful businessman, but he also had a very dark secret. In the early 1990s, police in the Indianapolis area began investigating a series of disappearances. Sometimes men who visited the local gay bar were never seen again. The investigators couldn't figure out who was responsible. In 1995, they finally received a break in the case. A victim that escaped called the police and described the man who attacked him. He also gave police the man's license plate number. The license plate belonged to Herb Baumeister. The police approached Herb and told him he was a suspect, and they asked to search his property. Herb refused to let the police conduct a search, but the stress of the investigation caused his behavior to become very erratic at home. In 1996, Herb's wife divorced him, then allowed police to search the house and yard. The remains of 11 men were found in the yard, and it didn't take long to figure out how Herb was able to keep it a secret. Once a year, Julie would take the children and go on vacation for a week without Herb. During that week, he would look for homosexual men to kidnap and kill. Rather than await his imminent arrest, Herb fled to Ontario. On July 3, 1996, he went to the Pinery Provincial Park and shot himself in the head. Herb Baumeister would never stand trial for his crimes. As investigators continued looking into his crimes, they concluded he probably killed 12 more people in Ohio as well. Herb's property was searched again as recently as October 4, 2022. Dogs were used to find even more remains. So the true body count is still not known. Retaliation for Murder. Sometimes grief combined with misguided beliefs can have tragic consequences. Leif O'Connell was 23 years old. He was deeply in love with Annie Fulford, who was 17 years old at the time. The couple planned to marry the following year after her 18th birthday. On December 27th, Leif and Annie went to visit her brother's mobile home. They arrived while 4 black men were in the process of robbing the place. One of the burglars shot Annie in the head. She died the next day from her injury. Leif was emotionally destroyed by Annie's death. He would occasionally visit her parents' house, where he looked at her cremated remains and cried for hours. Eventually, Leif's sorrow would turn to anger. The culprits responsible for Annie's death were captured and sent to prison, but Leif wasn't satisfied. He decided to blame all black men for his lover's demise. On February 12, 1998, Leif committed his first murder by randomly shooting Richard Warlow Jr. in the abdomen. Robert's body was found in the street sometime later. Over the next 2 weeks, police began hearing more reports of black men being shot. The story was the same every time. 2 white men would pull up in a jeep or car and begin firing at the randomly selected victims. The police saw Leif driving his jeep on February 26th. He was pulled over and had 2 passengers in the vehicle. One of them got out and told police that Leif and the other person had just shot 2 black men. Leif was arrested and questioned about the shootings. Although he had only killed 1 person, he had tried to kill several more. He said he was killing black men in retaliation for Annie's murder. Shooting them made him feel better. His mother couldn't believe that her son would do this. She told a reporter, "I can't imagine Leif doing something like this. He always cared about people, and he isn't a racist." The legal system was not sympathetic to Leif's cause. He was sentenced to 175 years in prison for 1 count of murder and 5 counts of attempted murder. We have covered just a few of the more horrible events in Indiana history today. Is there anything we should have included but didn't? If so, let us know about it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We are here every week bringing horrible history to life, and we would love for you to join us. Thank you for watching Bad Things in History.